A lunch tray crashed against the cafeteria floor. Milk splashed across polished tiles. Plastic forks scattered. Laughter burst out like fireworks.
Everyone, stay in your seats.
And in the center of it all stood a 6-year-old girl, frozen. Ava Thompson didn't move. Her small fingers trembled at her sides. Her shoes, slightly worn at the front, were now soaked in milk. Well. Ms. Carter's voice sliced through the noise. Are you going to clean that up, Ava? Or are you waiting for someone richer to do it for you? The cafeteria fell into a dangerous kind of silence, the kind where humiliation breathes loudly. Ava bent down slowly. Her knees touched the cold floor. She began wiping the milk with trembling napkins while the other children stared. Inside her tiny chest, something twisted. She didn't cry. She refused to cry. But she felt it, the sting of being different. What no one in that cafeteria knew, what no one in that entire building could even imagine, was that the man who dropped her off every morning in an old, rusty pickup truck was a billionaire. And he owned the school. Westbridge Academy was one of the most prestigious private elementary schools in the state. Tuition cost more than some people's yearly rent. Parents arrived in black SUVs, luxury sedans, and custom electric cars. Children carried tablets newer than their teachers' laptops. And then there was Ava. Her uniform was clean but slightly faded from careful washing. Her backpack wasn't designer. Her lunch came in a simple brown paper bag. Ms. Carter noticed that immediately during the first week. She had a habit of noticing status. She smiled sweetly when parents wore expensive watches. She offered extra praise to children whose families donated to the school. And when she first saw Daniel Thompson step out of that old pickup truck wearing jeans and work boots, she had already made her judgment. She didn't know she was looking at a billionaire. Stay with this story, because what happened next shocked the entire school. And if you like powerful stories like this, subscribe now, you won't want to miss what's coming. Daniel Thompson built his empire quietly. Tech investments. Educational holdings. Real estate. He believed in silence over display. He believed wealth should protect, not perform. And he believed his daughter should grow up understanding humility. That was why he never told the school who he really was. He wanted to observe. He wanted to see whether Westbridge valued character or money. He was about to get his answer. The bullying didn't explode overnight. It crept in slowly. Ava, is your family comfortable with tuition payments? Miss Carter asked one afternoon, smiling thinly. Ava blinked. Yes, because this school requires a certain level of commitment. A few students giggled. Another day, during art class, the students were told to bring supplies from home for a creative showcase. Children arrived with premium art kits, glitter pens, imported paint sets. Ava brought crayons and recycled paper. When it was her turn to present, she stood up proudly. I made a house, she said softly. Miss Carter took the drawing. Held it up. This is simple, she said. Then she held up another student's glitter-covered 3D model. Class, this is what preparation looks like. The message landed like a slap. Ava sat down slowly. That day, she stopped raising her hand. That day, something began breaking. And children can smell vulnerability. At recess, whispers followed her. Her dad's truck sounds like it's dying. Maybe they can't afford new shoes. She probably got in on scholarship. Each comment stacked quietly inside her small heart. Every afternoon, Daniel knelt beside her before she entered the school gates. Remember, he would say gently, kindness is wealth. She always nodded. But one evening, she didn't. She sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Daniel noticed immediately. He had negotiated billion-dollar contracts. He had read markets before they crashed. But nothing escaped him like the silence of his child. What happened today? He asked softly. She hesitated. Then she asked the question that changed everything. "Daddy, are we poor?" The air shifted. Daniel didn't react immediately. He didn't explode. He didn't curse. But something in his chest hardened. "Why would you ask that?" he asked calmly. "Because everyone else looks better," she whispered. He pulled her into his arms. "We are not poor," he said quietly. "And even if we were, that would never make you less." But when she went to sleep that night, Daniel remained seated in the dark living room. His jaw was tight. His eyes were distant. He replayed every possibility. Had someone said something? Had a teacher crossed a line? He picked up his phone. "Prepare a full internal review of Westbridge Academy," he said calmly to his assistant. "And schedule an unscheduled board presence tomorrow." His tone was steady. But beneath that calm, a storm was forming. The next morning, an announcement echoed through the halls. "All faculty are required in the auditorium at 1 p.m. for a mandatory board assembly." Miss Carter felt excitement bloom in her chest. Board members rarely appeared without reason. Perhaps they were recognizing excellence. Perhaps her high standards had been noticed. She adjusted her blazer in the mirror. Meanwhile, Ava sat at her desk, quiet. At lunchtime, she accidentally bumped into another student. The tray fell. Milk spilled again. And this time, Miss Carter didn't even pretend. "Oh look," she said loudly. Careless as usual. The class laughed harder this time. And this time, Ava's eyes filled with tears. She blinked rapidly. She would not cry. She would not give them that. If you're feeling something right now, anger, frustration, protectiveness, stay with this story. And if you believe no child should ever feel small because of money, make sure you subscribe and like the video, because stories like this matter. At 1 p.m., the auditorium doors opened. Teachers filled the seats. Whispers spread. The board members entered first. Then a tall man in a tailored navy suit stepped in behind them. Confident. Composed. Unmistakable. Miss Carter stared. Her breath caught. It was him. The pickup truck father. But something was different. Power radiated from him like heat. He stepped onto the stage. And the room fell silent. This is where everything begins to unravel. Escalation increases. Tension rises. The reveal builds but does not fully resolve yet. Daniel Thompson stood at the center of the stage, hands calmly folded in front of him. The room was silent. Not respectful silent. Fearful silent. Miss Carter felt her throat tighten. Why was he here? Why was the father of that little girl standing beside the board? One of the board members leaned toward the microphone. "Thank you all for attending on short notice. We have an important matter to address regarding school culture and conduct." Daniel stepped forward. "My name," he said evenly, "is Daniel Thompson." The name meant nothing to most of the teachers. But to the board members seated behind him, it meant everything. "I am the majority stakeholder of Westbridge Education Holdings." The words didn't land immediately. They hovered. Then they dropped. A murmur swept through the auditorium. Miss Carter blinked. Majority stakeholder? That meant he owned the school. Not symbolically. Literally. Her heart began pounding. Daniel's expression didn't change. "For the past month," he continued, "my daughter has attended this school anonymously. Every teacher in the room knew who his daughter was. Ava. The quiet one. The one in worn shoes. The one they had overlooked." A projector flickered to life behind him. Cafeteria footage appeared on the massive screen. The tray falling. Milk spilling. A small girl kneeling. And then, Miss Carter's voice. "Are you waiting for someone richer to clean that up?" The audio echoed throughout the auditorium. Clear. Undeniable. A few teachers shifted uncomfortably. Daniel didn't look at the screen. He looked directly at Ms. Carter. Prejudice, he said calmly, is often disguised as standards. Ms. Carter's mouth went dry. This institution prides itself on excellence, Daniel continued. But excellence without compassion is arrogance. The next clip played. Art class. Ava holding up her recycled paper drawing. Ms. Carter's voice again. This is simple. Then laughter from students. The video paused on Ava's face. Small. Embarrassed. Trying not to cry. Daniel finally turned toward the screen. He didn't speak for several seconds. That silence weighed more than shouting ever could. My daughter came home last week, he said quietly, and asked me if we were poor. The auditorium felt like it had lost oxygen. She is 6 years old. His voice tightened slightly, the only crack in his composure. 6. The board members behind him sat stiffly. They had seen the full internal report that morning. More clips. More subtle comments. More favoritism toward wealthier families. More remarks that walked dangerously close to discrimination. Daniel stepped closer to the edge of the stage. I did not enroll my daughter here because she needed prestige, he said. I enrolled her here to observe values. His eyes moved across the faculty. And what I observed disappointed me. Ms. Carter felt sweat gather at the back of her neck. She tried to rationalize. It wasn't bullying. It was maintaining standards. It was encouraging preparedness. But the videos told a different story. An intent didn't erase impact. A board member stood. Effective immediately, he announced, Ms. Carter is suspended pending review. Gasps filled the room. Ms. Carter's knees nearly gave out. But Daniel raised a hand slightly. Suspended, he repeated calmly. Not terminated. That surprised everyone. Even the board. He turned toward Ms. Carter fully now. You believed you were protecting excellence, he said. She swallowed. Yes, she managed to whisper. But excellence, Daniel continued, does not humiliate children. The words hit harder than anger. You judged my daughter by her shoes, he said. You evaluated her worth by a truck. His voice sharpened slightly now. You never once evaluated her kindness. Her intelligence. Her courage. He let that sit. Then he faced the room again. This school will undergo immediate cultural restructuring. A ripple of tension moved through the staff. Anonymous scholarship protections will be reinforced. Staff bias training will be mandatory. Evaluation metrics will shift from donor influence to student welfare. He wasn't just correcting a teacher. He was correcting a system. Ms. Carter felt something worse than fear. She felt small. The same way Ava must have felt kneeling in spilled milk. Daniel stepped down from the stage. But before he sat, he added one final sentence. No child should ever question their worth because of adult insecurity. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Ms. Carter's eyes filled with tears. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet realization kind. And for the first time, she replayed her own words in her head, the tone, the smirk, the public corrections. She had thought she was shaping discipline. Instead, she had shaped shame. Daniel exited the auditorium without another word. But the escalation wasn't over. Because outside the auditorium doors, Ava was waiting. She had been called out of class. She didn't understand why. She sat on a bench, swinging her small legs nervously. When Daniel walked toward her in that navy suit, she blinked. Daddy. He knelt down in front of her. The expensive suit didn't matter. The power didn't matter. In that moment, he was just her father. Did you get in trouble? She whispered. He shook his head. Gently, no, sweetheart. She studied his face. Are you mad? He paused. Yes, he said softly. Very. Her eyes widened slightly. Not at you, he added quickly. Never at you. He pulled her into a hug. And for the first time since the cafeteria incident, Ava cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears soaking into her father's jacket. And that sight, a billionaire kneeling on the school hallway floor holding his crying daughter, would become the moment teachers remembered most. Because power doesn't look like shouting. It looks like protection. If you're still watching right now, it means this story is hitting you. And if you believe parents should always protect their children, comment protect below. It matters. But this story isn't finished. Because suspension was only the beginning. Real transformation was coming. And the biggest twist hadn't happened yet. The following Monday, Westbridge Academy felt different. Not quieter. Heavier. Parents had heard whispers. Staff members walked more carefully. Students sensed something had shifted, even if they didn't fully understand what. Miss Carter did not return that week. In her absence, a substitute teacher stepped in, warm, patient, observant. For the first time since arriving at Westbridge, Ava raised her hand again. And when she did, her answer was thoughtful. Confident. Intelligent. It wasn't that her intelligence had suddenly grown. It had simply been given room to breathe. Meanwhile, Daniel wasn't finished. He didn't believe in symbolic gestures. He believed in structural change. A private board session was held 3 days later. Policies were reviewed line by line. Anonymous reporting systems were strengthened. Performance reviews were restructured to measure emotional intelligence alongside academic outcomes. Because Daniel understood something most leaders ignored. Culture is not declared. It is demonstrated. And if humiliation could exist publicly in a cafeteria, then bias had been tolerated quietly elsewhere. But while systems were being corrected behind closed doors, the most important moment was still personal. When Ms. Carter returned 2 weeks later, she was not the same. Suspension had not been a vacation. It had been an awakening. She had sat through uncomfortable workshops. She had reviewed the footage repeatedly. She had listened to professionals explain childhood shame, long-term psychological imprinting, and the subtle violence of exclusion. She had not slept well. And now, standing outside classroom 2B, she felt something unfamiliar. Humility. Inside, Ava sat at her desk, coloring quietly. When Ms. Carter entered, the classroom stilled slightly. Children noticed tension the way animals sense storms. Ms. Carter began the lesson normally. No sharp tone. No subtle remarks. Just calm instruction. Halfway through the morning, she paused. She walked slowly toward Ava's desk. Every eye followed. She knelt down. Not dramatically. Not for performance. Simply to be eye level. Ava, she said gently. Ava looked up. There was no fear in her eyes anymore. Just caution. I owe you an apology. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning. I spoke to you in ways that were unfair, Miss Carter continued. And I made assumptions that were wrong. She swallowed. I am sorry. No excuses. No justification. Just accountability. Ava studied her for a long moment. Children are honest judges of sincerity. Then she nodded. It's okay, she said softly. And in that moment, something repaired itself. Not perfectly. But honestly. Later that afternoon, Daniel received a report summary from the board. Policy updates, approved. Mandatory empathy certification for all faculty, implemented. Blind donor influence review, completed. He read it carefully. Then he closed the file. But the real closure didn't happen in a boardroom. It happened in a school hallway. That Friday, Westbridge held its annual student art showcase. Parents filled the halls. Cameras flashed. Conversations buzzed. At the center of the main display wall hung a simple piece of artwork. Recycled paper. Crayon lines. A drawing of a house with sunlight pouring through the windows. Underneath it, a small plaque read, "Creativity has no price tag." Parents paused in front of it. Some smiled. Some felt something deeper. Miss Carter stood a few steps away, watching quietly. Daniel walked in holding Ava's hand. He was back in jeans. Back in boots. No tailored suit. No stage. No announcement. Just a father. A few parents recognized him now. Word had spread. Whispers followed them softly. That's him. The billionaire. The owner. Daniel ignored it. He wasn't there for reputation. He was there for his daughter. Ava spotted her artwork and gasped. "Daddy! That's mine." Her voice carried pride now, not hesitation. Daniel knelt beside her. "It's beautiful," he said. She beamed. "Do you think everyone likes it?" He looked at her carefully. "What matters is that you like it." She nodded thoughtfully. Then she asked the question only a child could ask. "Are we still rich?" Daniel smiled slightly. "Yes. Even if we use paper like this. Especially then." She thought about that. Then she did something unexpected. She walked over to Ms. Carter. Daniel watched quietly. Ava looked up at her teacher. "I made another drawing," she said. "It's for you." Ms. Carter blinked in surprise. "For me?" Ava handed her a folded piece of paper. Ms. Carter opened it slowly. Inside was a drawing of a classroom. Everyone smiling. Even her. At the top, in uneven letters, Ava had written, "Kind teachers make strong kids." Ms. Carter's eyes filled instantly. Because forgiveness is heavier than punishment. Daniel felt something shift inside him as he watched. He had expected correction. He had demanded reform. But he had not expected grace. And that was the true twist. The billionaire who came prepared to protect. Learned something from his 6-year-old daughter about mercy. On the drive home in the old pickup truck, Ava leaned back in her seat. "Daddy." "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you happy?" He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Yes." "Because you won." He shook his head slightly. "No." "Then why?" He paused. "Because you didn't let them make you unkind." She considered that. Then she smiled and looked out the window. That night, Daniel made one final quiet decision. He increased funding for anonymous scholarships across every school his company owned. He implemented leadership training focused entirely on empathy metrics. And he added one principle to every executive meeting moving forward. No decision is successful if it humiliates the smallest voice in the room. Because true wealth is not measured in assets. It is measured in impact. And real power is not about exposure. It is about protection. Weeks later, Westbridge Academy felt lighter. Not because a billionaire had revealed himself, but because dignity had been restored. And every morning, the old pickup truck still pulled up to the gates. Some parents stared. Some whispered. But Daniel never changed it. Because humility was intentional. And Ava walked through those gates taller now. Not because her father owned the school, but because she understood something far more powerful. Her worth was never for sale. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that kindness matters more than status, take a moment right now to like this video. Stories like this deserve to be shared. And if you believe every child deserves dignity, subscribe and join this community. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We tell stories that matter. And remember, sometimes the smallest girl in worn shoes is the daughter of a billionaire. But even more importantly, she is a child who learned that true wealth begins in the heart.